The Parents of Moses by Ginzberg. When Pharaoh's proclamation was issued, decreeing that the men children of the Hebrews were to be cast into the river, Amram, who was the president of the Sanhedrin, decided that in the circumstances it was best for husbands to live altogether separate from their wives. He set the example. He divorced his wife, and all the men of Israel did likewise. 27, for he occupied a place of great consideration among his people, one reason being that he belonged to the tribe of Levi, the tribe that was faithful to its God even in the land of Egypt, though the other tribes wavered in their allegiance and attempted to ally themselves with the Egyptians, going so far as to give up Abraham's sign of the covenant. 28, to chastise the Hebrews for their impiety, God turned the love of the Egyptians for them into hatred, so that they resolved upon their destruction. Mindful of all that he and his people owed to Joseph's wise rule, Pharaoh refused at first to entertain the malicious plans proposed by the Egyptians against the Hebrews. He spoke to his people, "You fools, we are indebted to these Hebrews for whatever we enjoy, and you desire now to rise up against them." But the Egyptians could not be turned aside from their purpose of ruining Israel. They deposed their king and incarcerated him for 3 months, until he declared himself ready to execute with determination what they had resolved upon, and he sought to bring about the ruin of the children of Israel by every conceivable means. Such was the retribution they had drawn down upon themselves by their own acts. 29. As for Amram, not only did he belong to the tribe of Levi, distinguished for its piety, but by reason of his extraordinary piety, he was prominent even among the pious of the tribe. He was one of the 4 who were immaculate, untainted by sin, over whom death would have had no power, had mortality not been decreed against every single human being on account of the fall of the first man and woman. The other 3 that led the same sinless life were Benjamin, Jesse the father of David, and Chilib the son of David. 30. If the Shekinah was drawn close again to the dwelling place of mortals, it was due to Amram's piety. Originally, the real residence of the Shekinah was among men, but when Adam committed his sin, she withdrew to heaven, at first to the lowest of the 7 heavens. Thence she was banished by Cain's crime, and she retired to the 2nd heaven. The sins of the generation of Enoch removed her still farther off from men. She took up her abode in the 3rd heaven, then successively in the 4th, on account of the malefactors in the generation of the deluge, in the 5th, during the building of the Tower of Babel and the confusion of tongues, in the 6th, by reason of the wicked Egyptians at the time of Abraham, and finally in the 7th, in consequence of the abominations of the inhabitants of Sodom. 6 righteous men, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Levi, Kohath, and Amram, drew the Shekinah back, one by one, from the 7th to the 1st heaven, and through the 7th righteous man, Moses, she was made to descend to the earth, and abide among men as aforetime. 31. Amram's sagacity kept pace with his piety and his learning. The Egyptians succeeded in enslaving the Hebrews by seductive promises. At first, they gave them a shekel for every brick they made, tempting them to superhuman efforts by the prospect of earning much money. Later, when the Egyptians forced them to work without wages, they insisted upon having as many bricks as the Hebrews had made when their labor was paid for, but they could demand only a single brick daily from Amram, for he had been the only one whom they had not led astray by their artifice. He had been satisfied with a single shekel daily, and had therefore made only a single brick daily, which they had to accept afterward as the measure of his day's work. 32. As his life partner, Amram chose his aunt Jochebed, who was born the same day with him. She was the daughter of Levi, and she owed her name, divine splendor, to the celestial light that radiated from her countenance. 34. She was worthy of being her husband's helpmeet, for she was one of the midwives that had imperiled their own lives to rescue the little Hebrew babes. Indeed, if God had not allowed a miracle to happen, she and her daughter Miriam would have been killed by Pharaoh for having resisted his orders and saved the Hebrew children alive. When the king sent his hangmen for the 2 women, God caused them to become invisible, and the bailiffs bade to return without accomplishing their errand. 35. The first child of the union between Amram and Jochebed, his wife, who was 126 years old at the time of her marriage, was a girl, and the mother called her Miriam, bitterness, for it was at the time of her birth that the Egyptians began to envenom the life of the Hebrews. The second child was a boy called Aaron, which means, "Woe unto this pregnancy," because Pharaoh's instructions to the midwives to kill the male children of the Hebrews was proclaimed during the months before Aaron's birth 36.